Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Canning and Preserving for Dummies, 3rd edition, by Amelia Jeanroy, with Karen Ward. Narrated by Angie Hickman. Publisher's note: in this audio edition you will hear references to visual elements present in the print and ebook formats of the book. Limit of liability, disclaimer of warranty. The publisher and the author make no representations or warranties with respect to the accuracy or completeness of the contents of this work, and specifically disclaim all warranties, including without limitation warranties of fitness for a particular purpose. No warranty may be created or extended by sales or promotional materials. The advice and strategies contained herein may not be suitable for every situation. This work is sold with the understanding that the publisher is not engaged in rendering legal, accounting, or other professional services. If professional assistance is required, the services of a competent professional person should be sought. Neither the publisher nor the author shall be liable for damages arising herefrom. The fact that an organization or website is referred to in this work as a citation and/or a potential source of further information does not mean that the author or the publisher endorses the information the organization or website may provide, or recommendations it may make. Further, readers should be aware that internet websites listed in this work may have changed or disappeared between when this work was written and when it is read. Introduction. If you've thought about canning and preserving your own food, but haven't tried it because you're afraid it's too involved, well, it's time to set aside your hesitation. Today's methods and procedures for home canning, freezing, and dehydrating food are simple and easy. Many of the techniques may be similar to those your grandmother used, but you'll find they've been perfected. In this book, you get all the information you need to can and preserve food safely. About this book. Welcome to the wonderful world of canning and preserving. Consider this book your guide to discovering simple ways to preserve all the foods your family loves without any mystery or confusion along the way. This book presents 4 preserving methods: water bath canning, pressure canning, freezing, and dehydrating, in an easy-to-understand format, and walks you step by step through each technique. You don't need any previous canning or preserving experience in order to start, or continue, your endeavor to become a first-class food preserver. In this book, you'll find information like the following: what to look for to make sure you're preserving the best, most fresh fruits and veggies, a list of canning supplies and equipment, as well as instructions on how to ensure your canning equipment is in good working order, what techniques to help you preserve the best flavor in your foods and how to avoid spoilage and recognize it if it does occur, illustrations of different techniques and equipment, along with tips for making your canning and preserving journey fun and rewarding. A whole host of favorite recipes for your enjoyment. Also, we use the following convention throughout the book. Whenever we introduce a word or phrase that may not be familiar to you, we include emphasis. You can rest assured a definition or explanation is nearby. The recipes in this book follow helpful conventions of their own. For example, most every recipe includes a preparation time, cooking time, processing time, and the yield you should expect from your efforts. Here are some details that apply to all the recipes but aren't repeated each time. Use a vinegar with 5% acidity. Use pure salt with no additives. Canning or pickling salt is best. Cook all food in heavy-bottomed pots and pans. Use non-reactive equipment and utensils, items made from glass, stainless steel, or enamel-coated steel or iron. Use glass jars and 2-piece caps approved for home canning. Always use new lids for canning unless you purchase reusable lids, which can be used for multiple canning seasons. Start counting your water bath processing time when the water reaches a full rolling boil. Begin counting your pressure canner processing time after releasing air in the canner and achieving the required pressure. All temperatures are Fahrenheit. Note: all recipes and processing times are developed for altitudes at sea level to 1,000 feet above sea level. For higher altitudes, refer to the altitude adjustment for water bath canning in Chapter 4 and for pressure canning in Chapter 9. Finally, to make the content more accessible, we divided it into 6 parts. Part 1, Getting Started. Part 2, Water bath canning. Part 3, Pressure canning. Part 4, Freezing. Part 5, Dehydrating and storing. Part 6, The part of tens. Foolish assumptions. In writing this book, we made some assumptions about you. You know your way around a kitchen. You're familiar with basic cooking techniques and food preparation methods. You've never canned or preserved food before, or have relatively little experience with food preservation methods, and want basic, easy to understand and follow instructions. If you have canned and preserved food before, it was long enough ago that you want to find out more about the newer, safer, and easier techniques that are recommended today. Perhaps most importantly, you want to stock your kitchen with more natural, healthier, homemade alternatives to standard supermarket fare. Icons used in this book. The following 4 icons appear throughout this book and point out specific points or remind you of items you'll want to be sure not to miss. The tip icon directs you to tips or shortcuts we've picked up over the years. The information here makes your work easier and more hassle-free. The remember icon means, okay, you've heard this stuff before, but the information is important and bears repeating. When we mention the warning icon, pay special attention. The information tells you about a potential problem and how to overcome or avoid it. The technical stuff icons are bits of technical information that are interesting, but you can skip them if you want to. Of course, the info contained in these sections makes you seem like you've been canning and preserving since you've been walking. Beyond the book. In addition to the abundance of information and guidance related to canning and preserving food that we provide in this book, you get access to even more help and information online at dummies.com. Check out this book's online cheat sheet. Just go to dummies.com and search for Canning and Preserving for Dummies cheat sheet. Where to go from here. Although you can start in any portion of this book, don't skip Chapter 3. It describes safe processing methods and tells you how to identify spoiled food. If you have any doubts about canning and preserving safety, this chapter puts your fears at ease. If you want to know about a particular food preservation method, skip to the part devoted to that method. Each one begins with a chapter that explains the technique. Review these initial chapters before selecting a recipe to make sure you have a decent idea what the particular food preservation method requires. If you still can't decide where to start, review the recipes and start with one that sounds good to you. Then just backtrack to the general techniques chapter as you need to. If you'd like to make the pickled dilly beans recipe in Chapter 8, for example, check out Chapter 4 for the basics on water bath canning. If you want to dehydrate strawberries, you find the recipe in Chapter 17. Check out Chapter 16 for general dehydrating information. 1. Getting started. In this part, discover the benefits of canning and preserving your own foods. Find the best tools for each type of food preservation. Dispel the rumors you may have heard about preserving food. Grasp how and why safety recommendations exist for all types of recipes. Chapter 1. A quick overview of canning and preserving. In this chapter, discovering the world of canning and preserving. Understanding the whys and hows of canning and preserving. Preparing yourself for safely canning and preserving your foods. Becoming a successful food canner and preserver. Over the years, because of our busy lifestyles and the convenience of refrigeration and supermarkets, the art of canning and preserving has declined. Other than jams and jellies, many people started thinking of canning as sort of a novelty hobby. But today, there is a renewed interest in learning this art. People are now more concerned about food shortages and are starting or expanding on home gardens. People also want to have more control over and knowledge about where their food comes from. As a result, more people are finding that canning and preserving foods is an inexpensive and easy way to keep a full pantry year-round. This chapter gives you an overview of the 4 canning and preserving techniques presented in this book: water bath canning, pressure canning, freezing, and dehydrating, and explains the benefits, both practical and emotional, that canning and preserving your own foods can provide. If you're new to canning and preserving, don't be overwhelmed or scared off by the rules. This book walks you through easy, step-by-step instructions for each technique. After you understand the basic procedures for a method, like water bath canning, it's just a matter of concentrating on closely following your recipe. Appreciating the benefits of canning and preserving your own food. Canning and preserving are ways to protect food from spoilage so you can use it at a later time. Some methods, like dehydrating, also referred to as drying, date back to ancient times. Others, like canning, are a little more recent. There's no doubt that being able to offer fresh-tasting, home-canned or home-preserved foods to your family and friends throughout the year is definitely satisfying. Whatever food preservation method you choose, this book covers canning, freezing, dehydrating, and cold storage. Your efforts will give you the following: a pantry full of freshly preserved, homegrown foods. Having a stocked pantry offers a cushion against the fluctuating cost and availability of healthy foods. If you enjoy specialty foods from gourmet stores but dislike the high prices, home canning is a safe and economical way to preserve large or small quantities of high-quality food. Convenience. You can build a pantry of convenience foods that fit into your busy lifestyle and that your family will enjoy. Confidence in the ingredients that go into your food. If you love fresh ingredients and like to know what goes into your food, doing your own canning and preserving is the answer. Protection against rising food costs and temporary shortages. The whole idea of canning and preserving is to take advantage of fresh food when it's abundant. And abundant food generally means lower costs. If there is a temporary shortage of food, you will have what you need in your pantry. A sense of relaxation and accomplishment. For many people, working in the kitchen and handling food provides a sense of relaxation, and watching family and friends enjoy the products of your efforts gives you a great sense of accomplishment. Taking the time to select your recipe, choosing and preparing your food, and packaging and processing it for safety is fulfilling and a source of pride for you, the home canner. A good time. Producing canned and preserved food in your kitchen is fun and easy, and who doesn't like fun? Remember, the price of food has skyrocketed in the last few years. Food safety and availability have become a concern for everyone. Canning is the answer to both the price dilemma and the desire to offer nutritious foods throughout the year. Home canning and home preserving instantly reward your efforts when you follow the proper steps for handling and processing your food. Who's canning today? Although home canning and home preserving have skipped 1 or 2 generations, one thing is certain: they are on the rise. Men and women of all ages practice the art of home canning. It no longer matters whether you live in the country or in the city, or if you grow your own food. Fresh ingredients are available just about everywhere. Farmers' markets are commonplace in many cities and towns, making it easy to find the perfect foods to preserve for an affordable price. Exact statistics regarding home canning vary, but today, most home-canned products are used in the home where they're produced. In addition, a rising number of people are committed to eating locally, and these folks want to know what is in the foods they eat. By preserving their own foods, they can find the freshest food available and control what goes into their food. Introducing your techniques: canning, freezing, and dehydrating. The techniques discussed in this book are safe for home use and produce superior results when you follow all the steps for each method. You compromise the quality and safety of your food if you make your own rules. An example of this is shortening your processing period or not timing it correctly. Either of these adjustments can cause food spoilage, because the food doesn't heat long enough to destroy all of the microorganisms in it. Remember, review the basic techniques for your type of food preserving before you begin. And if you're already familiar with the techniques, review them annually just to refresh your memory. You'll experience fewer interruptions in your food preserving process. Always do a trial run before canning. This ensures you have all your supplies and steps in order, so that you can work quickly and efficiently. Check out the Key Tricks to Successful Canning and Preserving section later in this chapter for additional advice to ensure your first canning experience for the season is successful. You'll have no doubts about preparing safe, home-canned and home-preserved food after you discover what each method does, which method is best for different foods, the rules for the technique you choose, and safe food handling techniques. The following will introduce you to both ancient and modern-day techniques that will help you can and preserve with ease. Technical stuff. Put by or putting up are terms that describe canning years ago, before there was refrigeration. They meant, save something perishable for use later when you'll need it. About canning food. Canning is the most popular preservation method used today. Don't let anyone tell you that home canning is complicated and unsafe. It's simply not true. Canning is the process of applying heat to food that's sealed in a jar in order to destroy any microorganisms that can cause food spoilage. All foods contain these microorganisms. Proper canning techniques stop the spoilage by heating the food for a specific period of time and killing these unwanted microorganisms. Also, during the canning process, air is driven from the jar, and a vacuum is formed as the jar cools and seals. This prevents microorganisms from entering and recontaminating the food. Approved methods. Although you may hear of many canning methods, only 2 are approved by the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA. These are water bath canning and pressure canning. Water bath canning. This method, sometimes referred to as hot water canning, uses a large kettle of boiling water. Filled jars are submerged in the water and heated to an internal temperature of 212 degrees for a specific period of time. Use this method for processing high-acid foods, such as fruit, as well as items made from fruit, pickles, pickled food, and tomatoes. Chapter 4 explains this method in detail. Pressure canning. Pressure canning uses a large kettle that produces steam in a locked compartment. The filled jars in the kettle reach an internal temperature of 240 degrees under a specific pressure, stated in pounds, that's measured with a dial gauge or weighted gauge on the pressure canner cover. You use a pressure canner for processing vegetables and other low-acid foods, such as meat, poultry, and fish. For more information about pressure canning, see Chapter 9. Warning: don't confuse a pressure canner with either a pressure cooker or an electric multi-cooker that includes a canning button, both of which are used to cook food quickly. A pressure cooker does not have adequate room for both the canning jars and the water needed to create the right amount of pressure to preserve foods. At one time, manufacturers of some pressure cookers stated that they were safe for pressure canning. However, they have since issued a correction and acknowledged that their pressure cookers cannot be used safely for pressure canning. Remember, in both water bath canning and pressure canning, you heat your filled jars of food to a high temperature in order to destroy microorganisms and produce an airtight vacuum seal. The only way to reliably produce a safe canned product is to use the correct method for your type of food, follow your recipe instructions to the letter, and complete each processing step. For all the details you need about canning and a plethora of recipes, head to parts 2 and 3. Canning methods to avoid. Older canning methods are unreliable, and for that reason aren't used or recommended today for home canning. Occasionally, these methods are revived as being faster and easier than water bath or pressure canning, but using any of the following methods is like playing Russian roulette with your food safety. Just because your grandmother used one of the following methods doesn't make it safe to use today. If you see instructions that require you to use any of the following methods, do yourself a favor and pass by that recipe. Oven method. In this method, filled jars are placed in a hot oven. The method is unsafe because your food's internal temperature most likely won't become hot enough to destroy microorganisms and other bacteria that cause spoilage. There's just no guarantee that the food in the jars will reach the temperature you set your oven at. There's also a chance that your jars may explode from the sudden temperature change when the oven door is opened. Dry canning. In this method, products such as flour and beans are placed in traditional canning jars, and the jars are heated at a low temperature. The lids are applied either before heating or after the jars are removed from the oven. Heating dry goods in this manner is unsafe for two reasons. First, heating dry foods releases any moisture that is naturally still in the food. This moisture can develop mold and other pathogens that are dangerous to ingest. Second, higher fat foods such as nuts and grains will deteriorate more quickly after being subjected to heat. This deterioration causes the food to become rancid. Open kettle method. In this method, food is cooked in an open pot and transferred to sterilized jars. The two-piece caps are quickly added in hopes of sealing the jars as the food cools. This process produces a low vacuum seal that may be broken as gas from spoiling food builds up in the jar. This occurs because your food isn't heated to destroy microorganisms. There's also a chance your food may become contaminated when transferring it into the jars. Steam method. This method uses a shallow, covered pan with a rack in the bottom. After the filled jars are placed in the pan, steam circulates around the jars. This method is unsafe because the jars aren't evenly heated, and the steam isn't pressurized to superheat the food and destroy microorganisms. Don't confuse this method with pressure canning. Microwave oven. All microwave ovens heat differently. Because of this, there's no way to set standards for processing times that achieve a high enough temperature to penetrate the jars and destroy microorganisms that cause food spoilage. Dishwasher. Because there's no way to know the exact temperature of different dishwashers, and because temperature fluctuates throughout the cleaning cycle, dishwasher canning is a no-no. You can't rely on it to produce a safely canned product. You can, however, use a dishwasher to wash your jars and let them sit in the hot dishwasher until you're ready to fill them. Aspirin. Don't laugh at this, but at one time aspirin was used as a substitute for heat processing. It does contain a germicidal agent that acts as a preservative, but this agent doesn't destroy the enzyme that causes deterioration in food and food spoilage. Wax or paraffin seal. Using wax or paraffin was once thought of as a safe way to seal canned goods. It has proven to be unreliable, and dangerous botulism spores can still develop. About freezing food. Freezing foods is the art of preparing and packaging foods at their peak of freshness and plopping them into the freezer to preserve all that seasonal goodness. Freezing is a great way to preserve foods that can't withstand the high temperatures and long cooking times of conventional canning methods. The keys to freezing food are to make sure it's absolutely fresh, that you freeze it as quickly as possible, and that you keep it at a proper frozen temperature, 0 degrees. Remember, the quality won't get better just because you throw it in the freezer. Properly packaging food in freezer paper or freezer containers prevents any deterioration in its quality. Damage occurs when your food comes in contact with the dry air of a freezer. Although freezer-damaged foods won't hurt you, this does make the food taste bad. Here are 3 things to help you avoid freezer burn. Reduce exposure to air. Wrap food tightly. Avoid fluctuating temperatures. Keep the freezer closed as much as possible. Know what you want to remove before opening the door. Don't overfill your freezer. An overly full freezer reduces air circulation and speeds up freezer damage. For information and instructions on freezing a variety of foods, skip to Part 4. About dehydrating food. Dehydrating is the oldest method known for preserving food. When you dehydrate or dry food, you expose the food to a temperature that's high enough to remove the moisture, but low enough that it doesn't cook. Good air circulation assists in evenly drying the food. An electric dehydrator is the best and most efficient unit for drying or dehydrating food. Today's units include a thermostat and fan to help regulate temperatures much better. You can also dry food in your oven or by using the heat of the sun, but the process will take longer and produce inferior results to food that is dried in a dehydrator. Skip to Part 5 for dehydrating instructions for fruits, vegetables, and herbs. Holding the keys to canning and preserving success. Canning and preserving methods are simple and safe, and they produce food that's nutritious, delicious, and just plain satisfying to your taste buds. Becoming a successful food preserver takes time, effort, and knowledge of the rules. Follow these tips for achieving success as a home canner and preserver. Start with the freshest, best products available. Preserving doesn't improve food quality. If you put garbage in, you get garbage out. Know the rules and techniques for your canning or preserving method before you start your work. Don't try to learn a technique after you've started your processing. Work in short sessions to prevent fatigue and potential mistakes. Process no more than 2 items in one day, and work with only one canning method at a time. Stay up to date on new or revised guidelines for your preserving method. This book is a great start. You can also go to websites like freshpreserving.com, created by the makers of Ball canning supplies. Here you can find tips and directions for canning just about anything. Use the correct processing method and processing time to destroy microorganisms. The recipe will tell you what method to use, but it helps if you understand the difference between high and low acid foods and how the canning methods for each differ. Skip to Chapter 3 for details. Know the elevation you're working at. Adjust your processing time or pressure when you're at an altitude of over 1,000 feet above sea level. For accurate information on how to adjust for your altitude, refer to Chapter 4 for water bath canning conversions and Chapter 9 for pressure canning conversions. Put together a plan before you start your preserving session. Read your recipe more than once. Have the proper equipment and correct ingredients on hand to prevent last-minute shortages and inconvenient breaks. Make a list of what you need and check off items as you gather them. Test your equipment. If you're using a pressure canner or an electric dehydrator, test out the equipment to ensure everything's working properly. And always check the seals on your jars. Do a trial run. Before canning for the first time, or the 40th, it's a good idea to do a trial run. Canning jars of water is a great way to be certain that you have all the equipment you will need and that you are using the techniques properly. Do your jars seal? It is also a good way to experience the sounds that both a water bath and pressure canner make. Remember, use recipes from reliable sources or ones that you've made successfully before. Follow your recipe to the letter. Don't substitute ingredients, adjust quantities, or make up your own food combinations. Improvisation and safe food preservation aren't compatible. It is important to know that when canning, you can't double your recipe. If you require more than what the recipe yields, make another batch. Always use the size jars that are recommended in the recipe as well. Trying to use a larger or smaller jar may throw off the yield and final result. Now you're ready to take your food to its final destination in the preservation process. Whether you choose canning, freezing, or dehydrating, proceed down your canning and preserving road with confidence. Chapter 2. Gathering your canning and preserving gear. In this chapter, checking out your everyday kitchen utensils and equipment, exploring and using canning and preserving gear, viewing your options for packaging food for your freezer, Tracking down gear for
Sample complete. Ready to continue?